She smiles, laughs, touches your arm, and then says, "I'm just being friendly." But something inside tells you that this explanation doesn't cover what's really going on. Listen carefully, because what I'm about to say isn't meant to scare you, but to put you at ease. There's a subtle difference between friendship and affection, and most men never realize it. They learn to either overdo it with friendliness or ignore it altogether. Both mistakes lead to a lack of respect, attraction, and openness. When a woman is truly friendly, her energy is distributed evenly. She treats you the same way she treats her waitress, her male colleague, her cousin, and even the man she dislikes. There is a certain warmth, but it is expansive. Nothing is narrow or concentrated about it. But when you realize that her kindness is increasing around you, know that it is a choice on her part, that something else is driving her. Pay attention to consistency. A kind woman only shows kindness according to her own goals, not yours. She is not around your presence. A woman doesn't subtly alter her behavior the moment you enter a room. But when her voice softens to match yours, she relaxes in your presence and her focus intensifies. It's not a coincidence, it's instinct. Here's a truth most men overlook. Women aren't tested by words, they're tested by power. Before you decide she's a potential partner, you've already begun to see how she'll respond to emotional intimacy. Do you rush in or freeze in place? Do you try to silence her with descriptions and questions? Or do you remain calm, composed, and unaffected? When you show friendly behavior, she turns to you, not really asking, "Do you like me?" but rather, "Do you understand what's going on here without me explaining?" Men also rise or fall in the mud. The anxious man tries to transform friendliness into a feeling of security. He demands clarity quickly, requests precise definitions, and attempts to channel his energy into agreement. In doing so, he displays distrust, not because he desires it, but because he needs reciprocation to feel safe. The uninformed man, however, misses the point entirely and dismisses the underlying desire as background noise. He explains a lot, shares a lot, and makes her feel emotionally comfortable. Slowly and without realizing it, he trains her nervous system to feel safe without being threatened and comfortable without being pressured. A man who understands the female psyche does none of that. He doesn't seek friendship, he observes it. He doesn't flounder in his thoughts and dismiss them for fear of making a mistake. Instead, he stands his ground, focused, independent, and emotionally balanced. This balance creates immense strength and adds a unique dimension. Women aren't attracted to men who react emotionally, but rather to men who understand, who observe subconsciously, and attraction often begins with men who recognize that uncertainty is more than just uncertainty. If your friendship grows, if you grow a little distant, if it's no longer cold, if you become less open, that's information. If you become more expressive, when you stop putting in so much effort, that's information. And if she subtly seeks your approval after you stop giving so generously, that's information too. This isn't about games, it's about self-respect. When you're not convinced by her kindness, you give her space to be curious. And curiosity is the key to attraction. Most men destroy that key by trying to force it open. Remember this, a truly kind woman won't notice if you stop supporting her. But a woman who isn't supportive, therein lies the difficulty. But it's crucial. A woman who says she acts differently toward you is often reflecting an internal struggle. And no, this doesn't mean she's unfaithful. It simply means she's human. Attraction begins as a decision, a feeling, a change in her nervous system, or even a slight increase in her awareness while she's talking. She pauses for a moment before answering. Before she can think, her body senses that something has changed. And when this feeling clashes with her current identity, emotional state, or psychological condition, she considers restraint a form of kindness. Women don't lie to men. They lie to themselves first. So when she says it's okay, she means, "I haven't decided yet what it will be like." What you do in that uncertain space is what determines everything. Most men believe that pressure increases attraction. But when you bring interest, presence, and calmness, pressure doesn't generate desire. This can provoke resistance, especially when you hear something you don't fully understand. Be mindful of this. When a woman is simply being friendly, she isn't monitoring your reaction. She doesn't stare intently at you after saying something important. She doesn't alter her behavior based on whether or not you noticed her effort. But when something is going on inside her, it means she's become more aware of how you look at her. She looks without looking. She checks without asking. This isn't kindness. This is measurement. This is the mistake that costs men the most, trying to prove they're different. Men begin to overdo their friendliness, support, and presence, mistakenly believing that consistency is rewarded. But consistency without polygamy is expected. An expectation doesn't create emotional tension, it alleviates it. A woman's appeal lies in contrast, not chaos. Contrast. When her kindness is treated as expected, not exceptional, something interesting happens. You deliberately deprive her of a reward she didn't deserve, creating an emotional imbalance. Suddenly, she feels superior to you. Suddenly, she's the one approaching you. This is when men become frightened and overreact. They sense the shift and rush to appease. They calm down. They soften. They become more open, and the imbalance disappears. The introverted person, however, shows attraction but doesn't rush to correct this emotional imbalance. This is because the attraction that allows for this often stems from an awareness of insecurity. Let me clarify. It's not about ignoring or being cold. Coldness indicates a lack of emotional presence. Falling down is a sign of self-reliance. There's a difference, and women understand it immediately. A man who falls down is still talking enthusiastically, listening and participating, but his life doesn't revolve around her. His feelings aren't affected by her voice. His sense of self isn't dependent on her increasing demands. And this freedom is what transforms friendship into passion. Curiosity triumphs over desire, because now, instead of trying to attract her attention, she's trying to understand you. She begins to wonder why you don't understand, why you haven't grasped the situation, and why you don't need immediate clarification. This miracle activates the imagination, and from there, imagination slowly grows. This is a truth no one teaches men. Women don't like overly enthusiastic men. They like men who love their lives and include women in them instead of having their lives revolve around them. When you stop asking, what does it mean to be nice, and start asking, how do I want people to see me? Everything changes, because confidence isn't overwhelming, it's calm, and calmness is attractive. Pay close attention, because this is where the pattern becomes unmistakable. When her friendliness fluctuates, it's not by chance, but the result of careful consideration. One day she's friendly, open, and engaging. The next day she's cold, withdrawn, almost aloof. Most men would interpret this as a sign of confusion or mood swings, but female psychology doesn't operate by chance. Infidelity often occurs when there is unsolicited attraction. A woman is quiet when she feels nothing, expresses her feelings clearly when she feels everything, but hesitates when she feels something she hasn't chosen to allow herself. This attraction and repulsion isn't about controlling you, it's about managing yourself. Here's what's happening behind the scenes. Part of her enjoys the feeling of being around you. The other part assesses the risks, emotional risks, social risks, and identity risks. And whenever these aspects clash, her behavior changes. Men who don't understand this start looking for explanations. They ask, did I do something wrong? They over-explain, they try to resolve the conflict, and in the process, they subconsciously assume they are relying on her emotions. This is the quickest way to lose interest. The woman doesn't want to be responsible for the man's emotional balance. She feels obligated to pretend she understands him. A man who realizes this will act contrary to her feelings. He remains the same. He doesn't lean forward when you retreat. He doesn't bend when you return to your warmth. He remains steadfast, not to deceive, but because he truly is who he is. And this steadfastness becomes a mirror. Suddenly, he realizes that her changes don't control him, and her warmth doesn't steal him away. Distance doesn't diminish her value. Rather, it creates something rare, emotional security coupled with strength. This is where many men misunderstand women's psychology, believing they seek security, control, and the assurance that a man will remain strong even in moments of anger. So, when tension arises, don't panic. She's friendly, but she starts testing your boundaries, interrupting your time, checking your presence, and gently questioning your decisions. This isn't friendship, it's evaluation. She's asking, is this person bending under emotional pressure? Or are they holding their ground? Is the person bending, trying to maintain peace? He apologizes too quickly. He compromises his values to remain available. He prioritizes her comfort over his own. And while he may appear friendly, this is often misinterpreted as weakness. A calm man doesn't argue. He doesn't try to control. He doesn't belittle himself. If something doesn't suit him, he expresses his opinion calmly. And if things get out of hand, he handles them without drama. And when she does that, something interesting happens. Her friendship deepens, not because she's having fun, but because she's confident. Women are attracted to men who create emotional magnetism, men who don't need to convince, chase, or show off, men whose presence feels like an anchor. That's why so many women say they're attracted to men who are difficult to understand. Of course, what they mean is that you should be emotionally stable, your behavior predictable, that you shouldn't try to influence others' behavior, and that you should feel secure enough to accept uncertainty. When you stop trying to understand her emotional state and start focusing on your own perspective and the changes that are happening, she becomes more expressive, more curious, and more engaged, because now, instead of questioning your place in her life, she's questioning her place in yours. This question is more powerful than any confession. Remember that desire isn't expressed in words, but in feelings. If your presence subtly destabilizes their emotional state, they won't be as friendly as they should be. Someone who understands this will be less likely to express it, allowing it to develop naturally, inevitably, and in its own way. This is what most men overlook, that quiet, crucial moment when a friendship either ends or transforms into attraction. That's when you realize you can't decide. Human psychology, and especially female psychology, is built on recognizing patterns. Women often categorize men as confident, playful, cooperative, aloof, temporary, and serious. Most men tend to categorize themselves quickly because feeling safe is comforting, but comfort isn't the basis of desire. When you're simply friendly, then start asking unnecessary questions, bringing up details she doesn't want to remember, or bringing up emotional topics for no apparent reason, her mind searches for a categorization that fits her, but fails. This failure creates tension, and tension, when combined with emotional security, transforms into attraction. Notice how this happens. You are present but unexpected, warm but not eager, caring but not overly involved. Don't hesitate to provoke him, and don't go to great lengths to reassure him. You remain true to yourself. This situation forces you to confront something that worries you. You can't control the speed or direction of the movement. This is a path many women take without realizing it. She can add personal compliments without saying them directly. She can create moments where she feels like she has no plans, just with you. She can be more open about her frustrations, doubts, and inner world. It's not that she wants you to fix things, but rather that she wants to see how stable you are. And here lies the crucial test. Does her emotional openness unsettle you? Do men who mistake vulnerability for coercion rush to intervene? They overdo the support, assuming the roles of therapist, savior, and emotional support. In doing so, they break the rules. You no longer feel nervous. She feels cared for and nurtured. While this feeling is beautiful, it has no sexual connotations. A balanced man listens without being swept away by her emotions. He shows empathy without being confused. He doesn't rush to fix feelings that shouldn't be fixed. This self-control is incredibly powerful. I can be close without losing myself, and that's rare. When a woman feels that intimacy doesn't give her control over you, something in her perspective shifts. She becomes more aware of her behavior, considers how others perceive her, and pays more attention not to her physical presence, but to her emotional investment. At this point, kindness begins to feel unearned, because now she not only appreciates your presence, but also her place in your life. And therein lies the secret of her attraction to you. She may still feign friendliness, not to deceive you, but to protect herself from the waning desire for more. The desire for more means the risk of marginalization, loss of status, and emotional vulnerability, something women fear as much as men. Sometimes it's more than that. The difference is that women are rarely drawn directly to desire, but rather indirectly through closeness, affection, and time. Your role isn't to impose clarity, but to maintain clarity of mind. When you fail to project certainty, to distance yourself, and to reward hesitation and effort, you send messages that need no words. I value this relationship, but I value myself even more. This message will change everything. Now, instead of her kindness being the focus of your communication, your standards will be. And those quiet, lived, unspoken standards are incredibly attractive. This is the truth that bothers men. These standards don't increase when you prove yourself, but when you stop compromising. When she feels that communication with you is based solely on agreement, not emotion, kindness alone won't satisfy her curiosity. She wants to know her place. And by the time she starts questioning it, the dynamics have already shifted, because the most powerful change in any relationship isn't when someone loves you, but when they realize they can lose you without fear of being let go. Now we come to the truth that most men feel but rarely voice. The moment her kindness is no longer enough for him, their relationship reaches a silent crossroads. What happens next depends entirely on your character up to that point. Were you pursuing her, forgiving her too much, or waiting impatiently for her to choose you? That's the crux of the matter. Her curiosity fades, replaced by certainty, and certainty transforms into tranquility. But if you stand on solid ground, if you leave her kindness unnurtured, something else will emerge. Awareness. She becomes conscious of her emotional state, not as comfort, not as support, not as presence. She notices that your absence changes the atmosphere. Conversations seem more interesting without you. Her thoughts drift away in the absence of strangers. Kindness springs from within. She can reread moments, reread messages, and wonder why you didn't knock when she was waiting, why you didn't let her in when the door was ajar, why you seemed interested but didn't stay. Here's the secret. When a woman feels chosen, her attraction increases. By not forcing herself into the moment, she gives herself control over her desires. Many men sabotage themselves by acting out of fear. They confess, they seek clarity, they rush to seize the moment. In doing so, they steal what initially attracted them. A person who values time doesn't rush emotional attraction, but lets it flow naturally. And if something else is meant to happen, it comes willingly, not by force, in inevitable, seemingly spontaneous moments of shared existence. Otherwise, her kindness was never intentional. This is the hardest truth to accept, but also the most liberating. Not every spark is destined to become a fire. Some are meant to test whether you will abandon yourself in search of warmth or whether you will be whole in her presence. A man who conquers doesn't conquer a woman, he conquers himself. When you stop seeking kindness to transform into attraction, you stop draining your energy. You become selective, you become stable. You become the man who feels complete with or without affirmation. And paradoxically, this is precisely when women feel safest pursuing you, because where there is freedom, longing flourishes. The freedom to choose, the freedom to be, the freedom to show vulnerability without fear of reprisal. If she's simply being kind, her rejection won't change that. And that's perfectly fine. You'll live peacefully, preserving your self-respect without having to control the situation. But if it goes beyond that, when she realizes she can't control it, her feelings will intensify. Kindness will then become an effort. Attention will become intentional, and words will begin to align with actions without you even asking. So stop questioning the meaning of her kindness. Ask yourself this question: is she doing it out of self-respect or desperation? Because women don't respond to hope, they respond to presence. And presence is formed when a man knows who he is, what he wants, and what he doesn't want to ask for. I'll leave you with a question that must be answered honestly, because your answer will explain everything. It requires self-respect, emotional control, and equality. Share your thoughts in the comments. If this video changes your perspective, please like, subscribe, and share it with a friend who needs to hear these words before you take kindness for granted.